foreign bankers that we know of get 30 to 35 billion of U.S. taxpayer funds in order to bail out their derivatives holdings. Now, you'd have to say, if Gordon Brown and Sarkozy and Madame Merkel are so concerned about these banks in their countries, why don't they bail them out and let the U.S. Alone on this? But you see, these are globalized investment bankers, and that's how they operate. So AIG, the business with the bonuses, is really a diversion, but it's also the fact that the culture, I think, is changing. And this has been, I think, in many ways a watershed for Obama, that people are beginning to sense, some of the smarter people are sensing that Obama's a tool of Wall Street. I'll give you some examples. Paul Krugman, okay, Princeton Nobel Prize, he says the zombie ideas have won, and Obama is going with a cash for trash program. This is the Geithner bailout, the second trillion announced on earlier this week by Geithner. So zombie ideas, cash for trash, and it's all the same stuff from Paulson recycled now for the third time, says Krugman. Galbraith at the University of Texas, he says this is a massively corrupted banking system, and he basically says seize the zombie banks and put them out of existence, and he says increase Social Security pensions by 1/3. Now, that's a step in the right direction. I would say double Social Security pensions, because you're not going to have a 401k and you're not going to have anything else. So that's already something.
And by the way, the $10 trillion, and Bloomberg's reported this, would pay off 90% of the mortgages, massively increase Social Security because of inflation. So we always hear on the fake right-wing radio, oh, it's all about welfare. That's where all the money goes. That's a tiny percent. Everything is going to the offshore New World Order banks, who literally, as you said, are sucking the entire world dry and trying to put carbon taxes on industry to further enslave them, paid directly to the bankers. I mean, this is such an outrageous plan. How will they get away with it, as it's already stalling, without staging terror attacks? Webster, I feel one. I feel one. Talk about that. I think they're about to hit us hard.
Well, we're going to have this. We're going to have a 20 to 30 foot fireball here at the Key Bridge across the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. this afternoon. Now, I don't know whether this has gone off yet or not, but they say it's for a film. But people driving along, the George Washington Parkway on one side of the Whitehurst Freeway on the other here in D.C., they're going to see a 30-foot fireball in the middle of the Potomac. It's supposed to be some ships, some small boats, and one of them blows up as part of a movie, I think, for CBS. Yes, that's very, very much in the air. Anyway, these left liberals, Krugman, Galbraith, Grider of Rolling Stone, typical left liberal.
He wrote a book attacking us. He wrote a book last year attacking us, saying there's no New World Order. Now he writes a thing called The Big Takeover and says it's a power takeover by the banks. What is that flip-flop?
Well, what they're trying to do, of course, many of these people, Grider, I think, is a good example. He's trying to have a fake opposition that will be controlled, so there won't be a real opposition. You can also look at Madame Stasinopoulos Huffington, right, the rich elitist oligarch out there in California with her Huffington Post website. She's attempting to become the fake controlled opposition to the Obama regime, and I guess there are various Air America personalities in the same ballpark. Frank Rich of the New York Times says that AIG is Obama's Katrina. So you see the idea. Yes, I think there is a grave danger. We know that with Obama in office, the door to false flag is now wide open, and you've got, for example, they're meddling in Sudan. They have indicted General Bashir of Sudan for crimes against humanity, basically genocide, and you've got this venomous vampire, Susan Rice, at the United Nations. This is an apostle of extermination. This is a woman who was implicated in the great genocide in the Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo, Uganda area in the mid-'90s, and now she's back. She's very influential with Obama, and she's leading the charge in the United Nations to overthrow the regime in Sudan. And of course, you predicted
that a year ago. You predicted that they needed that black face to go into Africa. Going back to false flag terror and continue with your analysis, we get the word out about false flag terror? I mean, what are your ideas to counter this? Because clearly they need this to continue the agenda, and every time their agenda stalls, they stage terror attacks.
Yeah, look at the question of Sudan. I mean, what I think is likely is that the next round, whenever that is will come equipped with different targets, naturally. I think Sudan is a pretty big target right now.
We see the Pentagon already saying that African terrorists are going to hit our bases in Africa or the Middle East or the U.S., so I agree with you. I see them saying, now we got to invade Africa. The terrorists hit us.
And, of course, the secret is that China gets 6, 7, 8% of their oil supply from Sudan, and that's the reason. It's got nothing to do with humanitarian stuff. You also have to remember the reason that genocide, there is undoubtedly genocide in the Sahel region of Africa, all across the southern edge of the Sahara, but that's because there's a world economic depression. What do you think happened to those guys when the price of gasoline went to 150, of oil went to $150 a gallon? I mean, they've got to have gasoline there too, right? If their trucks run on the same thing as tractors or trucks anywhere else. So the depression, and I think that's also got something to do with Mexico. The internal collapse of Mexico is also it's a feature of a world economic breakdown crisis and global economic collapse, which is going on, and it's not influenced by...
Well, we've seen Iceland fall, we've seen Argentina fall, we've seen 3 nations fall or partially fall in Eastern Europe. Are you seeing that accelerate?
Well, I think so, and the problem is we don't know. I mean, the average for the last 10 years is that 40,000 people die in the third world every day of malnutrition, starvation, and diseases like diarrhea that can be cured for about 50 cents.
And the carbon tax, they admit, will double that.
Yeah. You can. I saw an item on the internet lately where somebody said if you try to bring Africa up to a U.S. or European standard of living, what would that mean? And some journalist says, well, you can't do that. That would be bad for the planet. In other words, you simply can't have development in Africa and South Asia if you're going to have this lunatic obsession with global warming, which of course is a pseudo-scientific fraud developed by Al Gore, not even by Al Gore, but by these circles around Prince Charles.
Club of Rome.
We're back on them. Yes, exactly. Club of Rome and all that. This guy Holdren, I want to point to somebody that he deserves more attention than he's getting. He's the White House science advisor to Obama. And he talks about something called de-development. In other words, countries that have reached the level of industrial society have to go backwards. And if you're talking about taking an industrial society and pitching it back into a post-industrial or non-industrial one, which is what is largely happening and has happened in the United States, the implications of this are genocide, because you get a situation in technical terms where the relative potential population density of the country falls below the population. So it means there's an overhang that can't be sustained of people, of us, the rest of us. Holdren talks de-development. There's an interesting article in Forbes where they talk about the Central Valley of California, right? It's one of the greatest agricultural production areas in the world. If you've ever been down there, the Imperial Valley, El Centro, California, Palm Springs,
and they say
California.
1 degree in temperature increase will wipe all that out when all the studies actually show it'll increase yield.
Yeah, then this is making the desert bloom, making the desert into just a tremendously valuable area of agricultural production. The commitment of the environmental fanatics and Malthusian elitists and basically genocidalists in the Obama regime is to shut down agriculture in the Central Valley of California.
Because when the banks bankrupt everything, they get to consolidate power.
Right, and but in addition to the banking, which is the main thing, of course, that's what holds this whole thing together, there's also the element of a fanatical anti-human ideology. That is to say, as you quoted before, a baby is a carbon machine. That is, a human being is nothing but a source of carbon pollution. I mean, that gets you into the area of high crimes against humanity, the Nuremberg Code, and all the issues of...
well, did you see the other environmental minister in England say, your water footprint's too big, and so we're going to restrict everybody's water, when everybody knows England is one of the most water-rich countries in the world and have never even charged people for their water usage because it's such a wet isle. Here's a microcosm. 8 years ago, Enron documents came out later. They, in some days, would make $1 billion in overcharging. They had fake energy trading boards. They would show the congressmen that would come through on tours. And they said in their memos, we've got to double and triple prices just to have profits. So we will turn the power off an hour a day to create the illusion of artificial scarcity, so they'll accept the jacking up of prices. And now they're doing that with water in California. The environmental groups have shut off all the reservoirs for, some fish or darter, some made-up snail, some kangaroo rat. And listen, I've been to smart growth conferences, Webster. They brag there it's a scam. I would even call them fanatics. These are just criminals.
Absolutely. But it's an anti-human ideology, and I think people have got to get down to very basic things. Are you in favor of human civilization and human society? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then other things become less important. But if you really think that human society has to be run for the alleged benefit of polar bears, snail darters, horned owls, and indeed wolves, or God knows what, sharks even, then you've really put yourself beyond the pale. And you're in the area of the Nuremberg Code, because to deny any population group essential food, shelter, clothing, medical care, this is a high crime against humanity. This was the issue at Nuremberg in 1945.
And now the UN has said they will vote for caribou and roaches